Thank you for tuning into this video, a continuation of Russian political institutions. We were just talking about the judiciary in the video. It's important just to realize, they have jury trials, they have some civil rights, but there is a lot of corruption going on. There's bribes, there's corruption. It feels like there's a lot of influence from Putin and his political party, and it's not necessarily innocent until proven guilty. There are a lot of people that are being convicted of crimes that there's not a whole lot of evidence involved. Now, beyond the judiciary, there are other institutions as well, like the military. The military, of course, plays a source of strength and a source of unity in the country. But under the Russian Federation, a lot of it was, not upgraded. So since the Cold War, they kind of got behind when it came to technology, with resources. And we're seeing just recently that they're replacing nuclear weapons, replacing submarines, working on cyber warfare. All of that has been upgraded heavily in just the past couple years. And they're using Syria as a way to showcase the strength and might of Russia today. So, of Russia showing their military might. It's happening right now, and it's becoming a source of, once again, pride for the Russian people as they see successes in Syria, according to their news and their military's reports. Now, they also may look back to Georgia back in 2008 as a military triumph. Essentially, they invaded parts of Georgia temporarily that were basically interfering with parts of Russia as well. So they're working under Putin to try and showcase the military as a strength again, as opposed to a. This is Ukraine might be an example of that as well. So the invasion of Crimea and the taking of Sevastopol as examples of showing off that military strength, that military might. Now, beyond just the military, there is what's called the FSS, the Federal Security System. It is essentially the KGB, but in our current format. It has become more prominent under Putin, who, of course, was a former KGB operative. So Putin has some background with the KGB, and many of his staff came from that area. So they've focused a lot on fighting terrorism. They've focused on cracking down on opposition. We have also seen, there have been numerous cases of assassinations in other countries, like someone dying of some rare radioactive isotope in London has been accredited to the federal security system as an assassination. So not very dissimilar to the CIA throughout its history. It does get involved with other countries heavily. Now, some further linkage institutions are not very strong in Russia. There isn't a huge link between the people and the government. And a lot of that has to do with the past in Russia. As you know, under the Soviet Union, there just wasn't that connection to democracy or democratic ideas. Now, there are political parties. They're not very stable, except for United Russia. Had a major opposition to United Russia either. A lot of it could have to do with, state-owned media, restrictions on free speech. There are restrictions. It's difficult to get on the ballot in Russia for president or for anything. So we see a lot of flaws with being able to offer more than one party. Also, there's a lot of state corporatism. We see a lot of the government getting involved with, what groups can be involved with policymaking. So allowing only certain interest groups and certain organizations to get involved. There's very little, civil society. There's very little involvement of the common people and interest groups. There's more involvement of companies and corporations getting involved with policymaking. And then, of course, also the media is an interesting discussion. There are some private media entities, but most are controlled by the government, by the state. And with most of them controlled, they don't necessarily provide the best information all the time. And it can be a struggle to keep a non-state controlled entity up and running. As we'll see in some videos in class, there is a lot of crackdown on the media and the freedom. Russia ranks as one of the worst countries when it comes to freedom of the press. Now let's look a little closer on political parties. We essentially don't have a one system. We have a dominant party system. We have one party that has a lot of power, but there are a bunch of other small parties. So there are options when you go to the voting booth, but the one party, the United Russia Party, is very controlling. They're relatively recent. They were founded in April 2001 as a uniting of multiple parties. They're a very centrist and conservative organization. They do not like radical ideas, which is part of the reason that they certainly appeal to the people. They're very middle ground. They're kind of a catch-all party or an umbrella party in that they represent a lot of different people. They have focused on like more market reforms, as in being very pro-marketization. Does United Russia dominate? Putin. Putin is a very charismatic leader, and that allows for a lot of people being persuaded to vote for United Russia. The machine that they, have regional elites that are supported by Putin, chosen by Putin, and those regional elites promote Putin and United Russia. So a lot of those regional influences play a major role. And of course, there's a lot of election requirements and restrictions. A lot of people are not allowed to be on the ballot, and they do have a threshold. The threshold is not 7%, it's 5%. And you have to be a legally registered party, and there just are some parties that are not allowed in Russia. Now, to go a little further, there is a Communist Party in Russia. The Communist Party of the Soviet Union. It is probably the most appealing of the other parties. A lot of people reflect back that they miss the days of the Soviet Union. Many people in Russia do. So they're basically the strongest opposition to the United Russia Party. They're also a lot less reformist. They focus more on centralized planning and nationalism, which were hallmarks of the. The video did cut off for a moment, so just want to mention again that the Communist Party kind of focuses on trying to bring back territories they lost from the Soviet Union, so that those Eastern European countries. And a lot of older Russians remember the times where maybe the Soviet Union benefited them, and they reflect back that maybe those were better times, and they tend to vote for this Communist Party. On the other hand, you have what's called a Just Russia, which is another group that has become more prominent. It's relatively new, forming out of other parties. So we've seen a lot of merging of parties trying to be able to compete with United Russia. It is more of a leftist ideological group, so not centrist like United Russia. But what's interesting enough is it has supported President Putin and President Medvedev, respectively. So it has backed up the United Russia group in the past. So it's not necessarily opposition, it's more opposition in name only. Probably the group that is more opposition is the Liberal Democratic Party, which they are very unlike any other liberal democratic party on the planet. They are not like the Lib Dems. This is a misnomer. They are a extreme nationalist organization that's very anti-Western. They have made nuclear threats on Japan. They have made anti-Semitic comments. They have been sexist about certain things. But they tend to get a pretty large support from working class men and the military, but not necessarily liberal Democrat. That's just a name. And Linkage institution, you could probably say would be oligarchs and the mafia. And oligarchs are, the wealthy elite in Russia. When we think oligarchy, we think very few people that are the elites in charge of government and in charge of society. And essentially, there is a group of wealthy elites that have controlled a lot of the economy and a lot of the industries. And back Now, the wealthy elite oligarchs got their power by supporting Yeltsin. And Yeltsin essentially made sure that those public industries were sold to them. So, after the fall of the Soviet Union, a lot of public industries and oil and the media and railroads and all that stuff was sold off to a few people. But Putin has kind of fought back against this group, including banishing people from for corruption, trying to eliminate the power of the oligarchs. So he's been trying to fight back against this group. And then on the other hand, there is a Russian mafia that gets involved with politics, has been involved with supporting certain campaigns, supporting certain businesses, and essentially running the black market of Russia. And that's enough for now. We will talk a little bit more in class. Thank you for listening.